gather around patrons. I have had time to collect myself. Forgive me, for I have a soft spot in my heart for bards, and I became too invested in the telling of my tale. Let us continue our story where Morgan left off. Our heroes, Jarek, Durin, and Runa woke in the fishery after a fitful attempt at a night's rest. They intended to make their way straight to Wind's Wonders to consult on the next steps after losing their friend Woza and the explorer Arya to the evil of Gauntlet. Jarek interrupted their preparations with a sad announcement. He declared with a heavy heart that he could no longer push forward in the party's quest. Seeing Woza and Arya die and feeling he had not done enough to stop it had been assigned to him, that though his life at sea was no longer possible, he could not stay here in this place any longer. And so it is here we bid farewell to Jarek. Who knows? Perhaps he shall appear again at a later time, or in another tale entirely. Such things happen in a tale such as this. For their part, Durin and Runa wished him well on his journey, but above all else felt a need to avenge their friend and push forward with their attempt to stop the evil of Belkara. Once the duo made their way to Rin's, they were introduced to new party members that had responded to Rin and Arya's letters. The first was a monk unlike any other they had ever seen. He was a bear folk that looked like a panda, and he carried with him at all times a large keg of alcohol. He said his name was Chen Po, and he swore himself to the party's cause with a smile. The other man, a strong fighter named Aryan Vex, was none other than Arya's brother. He was a stoic and simple man, a former soldier turned mercenary who regretted letting his sister set out on her own. He cursed himself for being a day late from saving her, but thanked the party for entering her at Dawnflower Library and doing what they could. He was well aware her obsession with Gauntlet, stating it stretched back to their childhood. Rin offered her condolences and explained that she could only see obscure glimpses of the future. If she had known Arya and Woza were going to die, she said she would have done more to prevent it, but that fate rarely cooperates with such meddling. She offered the party store credit to help them resupply and urged them to quench the light of Gauntlet as soon as possible, for her visions of the future were filled with blood and strange blue light. Before heading out, Durin and Runa wanted to pay their respect to Woza one last time. Thus they made their way back to Dawnflower Library. At the temple, High Priestess Dolly offered her sympathies and expressed remorse that none in the temple had the power to raise the dead. She did promise to see to the burial rites of both Arya and Woza, and the continued use of the library itself for their research as needed. Dolly gave Arya's property found on her remains to Aryan. There was not much, but one of her personal effects was a journal she had written in over many years in a strange cipher. Aryan, not being much for books, offered his sister's journal to Durin to try and decode it if he so wished. Aryan shed tears for his beloved sister. It was difficult for him to imagine going on without her, and his fury at the evil of Gauntlet was kindled as he looked at her body that day. Hope was briefly rekindled for the party when Runa suggested they seek out the services of the Stone Ring Pond as a last-ditch effort to bring Arya back, but unfortunately the head druid Wallywin told them none in the circle had the power of reincarnation. Aryan insisted they move forward in seeking revenge immediately, and thus the newly formed party of heroes set out yet again to the lighthouse. Runa warned them that the bloody haunt they had faced before could still be waiting for them in the tower. Runa's warning was correct. The terrifying haunt that had assaulted them before was there yet again. The party quickly defeated it, now knowing what to expect, and just like before it escaped through the ceiling of the tower into the lighthouse apex above. Durin used his thievery skills to defeat the difficult lock at the top of the 100-foot staircase leading into the cupola. The blood had soaked the lock, making it slightly easier to manipulate, but it was still a difficult task for the rogue. Once the door was opened, the party entered the room that contained the source of light for the tower. A massive crystalline shape floated in the center of the cupola, and it glowed with a strange blue energy that gave them goosebumps and their hearts filled with dread. Before they could examine the crystal, the blood horror they had defeated below took shape as a vampiric mist. Our heroes struggled to damage the creature, but fortunately managed to resist its attempts to consume their blood. In short order, they were able to destroy it. As they did, a woman's laughter filled the room, and they heard a voice saying,
"Adventures. I hate adventures. The last time I had to deal with a group was over 500 years ago, and it delayed my plans considerably. No matter, all is back on track again, as you shall now see."
The room swelled with eldritch power, and the lighthouse fired a blast of light down on the graveyard of Otari. The party did not seem affected by the light, but their instincts told them something terrible had just occurred. Injured and exhausted, they made way for the teleportation arch. Once they exited the archway, they immediately saw the terror Gauntlet had inflicted. Hundreds of zombies and skeletons were ripping themselves from the earth of the graveyard and were hurtling themselves off the cliffs into the city below. Some guardsmen were fighting the undead in the graveyard, and though our heroes tried to make their way to them and to the city beyond, they found themselves hindered by assaults from all sides. Just as they were finishing culling the undead around them, another light bathed them from the lighthouse. This time it was a smaller, more concentrated beam, and where it touched, a horrific creature appeared and attacked. Durin was almost slain by the creature, but our heroes rallied, saving their friend and defeating the beast. They made their way to the guardsmen who had destroyed the undead left in the graveyard. The city was dealing with the horde that had made their way into town, though fortunately many of them had perished in their initial dash off the cliffs into Otari. The party helped the city guard throughout the night, slaying the desiccated undead that had once been inhabitants of the quiet village until Captain Longsaddle was able to declare the threat defeated. It was a victory with great cost. Buildings were damaged, and over 30 citizens had been slain, including 6 city guard. As the next chapter of our tale begins, we find our heroes approaching a fine manor in the more affluent part of Otari. An emergency meeting of the leaders of Otari has been called by the mayor, and the party has received word that they are invited to participate. The morning sun shines mere hours after the terrible assault of Belkara began, revealing that some of Dawnflower's golden domes have been shattered completely.